In 1870, a 31-year-old man in Cleveland, Ohio, controlled 4% of America's oil refining capacity. By 1880, he controlled 90%. By 1904, he controlled 91% of oil production and 85% of final sales. His name was John D. Rockefeller, and the system he built did not die when Standard Oil was broken up in 1911. It evolved, it spread, and it controls your life right now. The gasoline you pump, the drugs you buy, the tech platforms you use, the food you eat, the banks you borrow from. Every single one uses the Rockefeller playbook: vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, regulatory capture, tax-exempt foundations that shape policy, market dominance so complete that competition becomes impossible. Rockefeller did not just build an oil empire, he built the architecture of modern corporate control. And you cannot escape it because the system is not Standard Oil. The system is the method, and that method has been replicated by every dominant corporation for 150 years. Amazon uses it, Google uses it, Pfizer uses it, JP Morgan uses it. They all learned from the same blueprint, the Rockefeller blueprint. This is the story of how one man created a system that still extracts wealth from you every single day, and why understanding that system is not academic, it is survival. John Davidson Rockefeller was born July 8, 1839, in Richford, New York. His father was a con man who sold fake cancer cures. His mother was a devout Baptist. This combination would define Rockefeller's entire approach to business: the con man's ruthlessness and the Baptist's moral certainty. He would destroy competitors without mercy while believing God had chosen him to organize industry for the betterment of mankind. This was not hypocrisy. This was genuine conviction that his monopoly was moral because it brought order to chaos and efficiency to waste. In 1859, oil was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania. The oil rush began. Thousands of prospectors flooded into western Pennsylvania to drill. Fortunes were made and lost overnight. It was chaos, boom and bust. Overproduction collapsed prices, then shortages spiked them. Rockefeller, who was 20 years old and working as a bookkeeper in Cleveland, saw opportunity, but not in drilling. Drilling was volatile, risky, dependent on luck. Rockefeller saw opportunity in refining, turning crude oil into kerosene for lamps. That was the real business. In 1863, Rockefeller invested $4,000 in his first oil refinery in Cleveland. Within 2 years, it was the largest refinery in Cleveland. But Cleveland had 30 refineries. Competition was fierce. Margins were thin. Most refineries operated at the edge of bankruptcy. This is where Rockefeller's genius emerged. He did not try to compete on price. He tried to eliminate competition entirely. And he did it through a method that would become the foundation of corporate America: vertical integration. Vertical integration means controlling every stage of production. Most refineries just refined oil. They bought crude from drillers, refined it, and sold kerosene to distributors. They controlled one step. Rockefeller decided to control all the steps. He bought the barrel-making factories so he did not have to buy barrels. He bought tank cars and railroads to ship his own oil. He bought his own warehouses for storage. He bought the distribution networks to sell directly to consumers. Every step that used to be a separate business generating profit for someone else, Rockefeller brought in-house. This gave him massive cost advantages. While competitors paid 25 cents per barrel from barrel makers, Rockefeller made his own for 15 cents. While competitors paid railroads to ship oil, Rockefeller owned the tank cars and negotiated secret rebates. The railroads paid him to ship his oil and charged competitors more. This was not just efficient, this was predatory. Rockefeller could sell kerosene at prices that put competitors out of business while still making profit. And that is exactly what he did. By 1870, Rockefeller created Standard Oil Company of Ohio. His refinery capacity had grown from one small plant to the largest refining operation in the world, but he still only controlled 4% of American refining. That was not enough. So Rockefeller launched the second phase of his strategy: horizontal integration. If vertical integration is controlling the entire supply chain, horizontal integration is buying or destroying every competitor. In 1872, Rockefeller initiated what historians call the Cleveland Massacre. Over 3 months, Rockefeller approached every refinery owner in Cleveland. He offered to buy their refineries. If they agreed, he paid fair market value and often hired them as managers. If they refused, he launched a price war. Rockefeller would drop the price of kerosene below cost. His competitors, who could not produce as cheaply, lost money on every sale. They had 2 choices: sell to Rockefeller or go bankrupt. Most sold. A few fought. They all lost. By the end of 1872, Rockefeller controlled 25 of Cleveland's 26 refineries. He went from 4% to 25% of American refining capacity in 3 months. This was the blueprint. Offer to buy. If they refuse, destroy them economically and buy the ruins. This method would be used in every industry, by every monopoly, for the next 150 years. Through the 1870s, Rockefeller expanded Standard Oil across America. He bought refineries in New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. He used the same tactics everywhere: secret railroad rebates that made his shipping costs lower than competitors, vertical integration that made his production costs the lowest, and ruthless price wars that destroyed anyone who refused to sell. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of America's refining capacity. 90%. That is not a business. That is a monopoly. But here is where Rockefeller's true genius emerged. He understood that monopolies face 2 problems. First, they are illegal. The Sherman Antitrust Act was passed in 1890 specifically to break up monopolies like Standard Oil. Second, they are hated. The public despised Rockefeller. He was called a robber baron, a ruthless tyrant, the most hated man in America. Rockefeller needed a solution to both problems, and he found it: the trust. In 1882, Rockefeller's lawyers created the Standard Oil Trust. Here is how it worked. Standard Oil of Ohio could not legally own companies in other states, but a trust could. Rockefeller created a trust that held the stock of all Standard Oil companies, 41 shareholders. All Rockefeller and his close associates controlled the trust. The trust controlled the companies. This was the first major corporate trust in American history, and it became the model for every trust that followed: Sugar Trust, Tobacco Trust, Steel Trust. All copied Rockefeller's structure. The trust allowed Rockefeller to control a nationwide monopoly while technically complying with state laws. But more importantly, it created a new legal entity. The trust was not a company. It was a holding company. It did not produce anything. It just owned other companies. This structure would evolve into the modern corporation, the parent company that owns subsidiaries: Berkshire Hathaway, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon. They are all descendants of Rockefeller's trust. By 1904, Standard Oil controlled 91% of oil refining in America and 85% of final sales. Rockefeller was the richest man in the world. His net worth was $900 million. That is 25 billion in today's money, but that is just paper wealth. At his peak in 1913, Rockefeller was worth 400 billion inflation-adjusted dollars, richer than Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates combined, the richest individual in modern history, and he built that wealth through the system: vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, legal structures that concentrated control. This was the system, but the public was turning against monopolies. In 1890, Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, making monopolies illegal. In 1906, investigative journalist Ida Tarbell published The History of the Standard Oil Company, exposing Rockefeller's tactics: secret railroad rebates, predatory pricing, crushing competitors. The outcry was enormous. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly and ordered it broken up into 34 separate companies. This should have been the end, the destruction of the system. But it was not. It was the beginning of the system's evolution. Because when Standard Oil was broken up, Rockefeller still owned shares in all 34 companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. Standard Oil of Indiana became Amoco. Standard Oil of Ohio became Sohio, later bought by BP. The breakup did not destroy Rockefeller's wealth. It multiplied it. Before the breakup, Standard Oil stock was worth about $600 per share. After the breakup, the combined value of all 34 companies was worth over $2,000 per share. Rockefeller's wealth tripled. Why? Because the breakup forced each company to compete, which drove innovation and efficiency. And because breaking one monopoly into 34 companies that still dominated their regional markets was not really breaking up the monopoly. It was just reorganizing it. Today, most of those 34 companies have merged back together. Exxon and Mobil merged in 1999. Chevron bought Standard Oil of Kentucky and Gulf Oil. BP bought Amoco and Sohio. The Standard Oil monopoly that was broken up in 1911 has essentially reconsolidated into Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and BP. The system broke itself up to avoid regulation, then quietly put itself back together over 100 years. But Standard Oil is not even Rockefeller's most enduring legacy. The real legacy is the system itself, the methods, the structures, the playbook. Amazon uses vertical integration exactly like Rockefeller. Amazon started as an online bookstore. Now it controls the entire supply chain. It owns the warehouses, the logistics network, the delivery trucks, the payment processing, the cloud infrastructure that hosts its competitors' websites. Amazon Web Services generates $90 billion in annual revenue. Rockefeller controlled refineries, railroads, and distribution. Amazon controls retail, logistics, and cloud computing. Same playbook, different century. Amazon also uses horizontal consolidation. It buys competitors. Whole Foods, Zappos, Twitch, Ring, MGM Studios, over 100 acquisitions. When it cannot buy a competitor, it copies their products and undercuts their prices using data from its own marketplace. Third-party sellers report their sales data to Amazon. Amazon analyzes that data, identifies successful products, creates Amazon Basics versions, and promotes them above the original. This is the modern version of Rockefeller's price war. Legal, barely regulated, and devastatingly effective. Google uses the trust structure. Alphabet is a holding company that owns Google, YouTube, Waymo, DeepMind, Verily, and dozens of other subsidiaries. It is the Standard Oil Trust, one parent company controlling multiple operating companies. This structure shields the parent from liability, allows tax optimization, and makes regulatory breakup complicated. Pharmaceutical companies use Rockefeller's regulatory capture strategy. Rockefeller did not just compete in markets, he shaped the rules. He lobbied for railroad regulations that favored Standard Oil. Today, pharmaceutical companies do the same. They fund the FDA through user fees, they lobby for patent extensions. They write the regulations they are supposedly regulated by. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Merck. They learned from Rockefeller. Control the regulators, and you control the market. The financial sector uses holding company structures. JP Morgan Chase is a holding company that owns Chase Bank, JP Morgan Investment Bank, and numerous subsidiaries. Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, all holding companies. When Dodd-Frank tried to regulate banks after 2008, the holding company structure made it nearly impossible. Which entity do you regulate? The parent or the subsidiaries? Rockefeller solved this problem in 1882. Banks copied the solution 100 years later. And then there is philanthropy, Rockefeller's final innovation. In 1913, Rockefeller created the Rockefeller Foundation with an initial gift of $250 million, over $7 billion today. The foundation funded medical research, education, and public health. On the surface, this was charity, Rockefeller giving back. But look deeper. The foundation allowed Rockefeller to avoid estate taxes. It gave him control over which universities received funding, which meant control over what was taught and researched. It bought him legitimacy. The man who destroyed thousands of competitors was now a philanthropist. The most hated man in America became a beloved benefactor. The Rockefeller Foundation funded the creation of modern medical education. It funded Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, Rockefeller University. It established the model for medical schools that emphasized pharmaceutical interventions. The foundation shaped American medicine to favor the pharmaceutical model, and pharmaceutical companies, many descended from Standard Oil's chemical divisions, profited enormously. Today, every billionaire uses the Rockefeller playbook. Bill Gates founded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, $75 billion in assets. It funds global health initiatives, shapes WHO policy, and influences national governments. Mark Zuckerberg created the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Warren Buffett pledged most of his wealth to the Gates Foundation. These are not just charity. They are tax avoidance, legacy building, and policy influence. Rockefeller invented the model. Modern billionaires perfected it. The Rockefeller family still exists, still influential. David Rockefeller, John D's grandson, died in 2017 at age 101. He was chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, founder of the Trilateral Commission. The family's wealth, estimated at $11 billion, is spread across hundreds of trusts and foundations. They still shape policy, fund research, and influence politics 150 years after John D. started Standard Oil. And here is the most important part. The system is not designed to be escaped. It is designed to be invisible until you are already trapped. You buy gasoline refined by ExxonMobil or Chevron, descendants of Standard Oil. You buy from Amazon, which uses Rockefeller's vertical integration. You search on Google, structured as a trust like Standard Oil. You take pharmaceuticals developed through a medical system, shaped by Rockefeller Foundation grants. You bank with institutions using Rockefeller's holding company structures. The system is self-perpetuating. It concentrates wealth, it eliminates competition, it captures regulators, and it uses philanthropy to buy legitimacy while avoiding taxes. This is the Rockefeller system, and it is not a conspiracy. It is just corporate structure, legal, accepted, and replicated by every dominant company in every major industry. You cannot buy oil outside the descendants of Standard Oil. You cannot avoid Amazon's logistics network. You cannot opt out of pharmaceutical medicine, shaped by Rockefeller grants. You cannot escape the banking system built on Rockefeller's holding company model. You live inside the system, and the system extracts wealth from you every single day and concentrates it at the top, exactly as Rockefeller designed it to do in 1870. Rockefeller said, "Competition is a sin." Most people hear that as greed, but Rockefeller meant it theologically. Competition is wasteful. It duplicates effort. It destroys capital. Consolidation is righteous. It creates efficiency. Monopoly is not theft. It is the natural end state of efficient markets. This was Rockefeller's worldview, and he built a system to enforce it. 150 years later, we live in that system. Amazon eliminates retail competition. Google eliminates search competition. Meta eliminates social media competition. Exxon, Chevron, and BP control oil. Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson control pharmaceuticals. JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citi control banking. The consolidation Rockefeller started has reached its logical conclusion. The end state is not thousands of competitors. It is 3 to 5 dominant players in every industry, all using Rockefeller's playbook. And the consolidation continues. Every year, fewer companies control more market share. Every year, barriers to entry get higher. Every year, the system gets harder to escape. This is the Rockefeller system, not Standard Oil. The method. And the method is eternal because it works. John D. Rockefeller created a system you cannot escape. Vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, corporate trusts, regulatory capture, philanthropic influence. That system is the modern economy, and you live in it every single day.